Hey Nick, thanks for your video. I'll try to work out better what I'm trying to say and why I'm trying to say it. I guess I'll begin with the anthropic principle, which I know it seemed very relevant to what I was getting at in my last video, but the reason I didn't bring it up was because I don't think it is helpful. Because, you said that the anthropic principle necessarily destroys any notion that there's an end or a purpose to the evolution of the cosmos. And that is certainly one way to interpret the anthropic principle. But other thinkers, other philosophers will use the anthropic principle as evidence for just the opposite. Um, so it doesn't really get us anywhere, I don't think. Um, because, if we want to assume that materialism is true from the beginning, then of course we've got a problem when we look at the fact that the laws of nature are finely tuned to such a precise degree that a few decimal places difference in the strength of the force of gravity or whatever, and life never would have had the opportunity to evolve. And the anthropic principle allows us to surmount this difficulty by saying that this is just one of many possible universes, and the fact that we, as living creatures, come to know a universe where life was a distinct possibility due to the fine tuning of these laws is no surprise at all. But of course, we're assuming that there are many universes, either existing parallel to this one, or that this universe is just one of many possible pathways that matter and space and time could have unfolded um, through. And that is an assumption which can't really be proven empirically, obviously. We can't get outside this universe to spy on other universes to see if life arose there. Um, and for me, I want to know about this universe. I want to know how it is possible that this universe that we know about um, could lead to life. And based purely on materialistic or mechanistic ontologies, I can't understand it. So let's leave the anthropic principle aside because, like I said, you could use it to prove either that the universe has a purpose or that it doesn't have a purpose. It just depends what perspective you want to take on what the anthropic principle means. And we could certainly discuss it more if you want, but I don't think it really takes us anywhere than where we began. It's kind of a truism in that sense. As far as bacteria being designed by evolution to do what they do and not having any intentionality, I think it's interesting that there's such a stark contrast between biology and life as it's been understood in the Anglo-American world, in Britain and America, and on the continent, the European continent. Um, Darwin came out of the school of thought heavily influenced by William Paley, who was famous for the argument from design that if you see a watch in the sand and you pick it up and have a look at its inner workings, you can only assume that there was some kind of an intelligent designer who put it together. Um, Darwin, of course, took this theory and kind of tweaked it a little bit because Paley thought the intelligent designer was God, but Darwin understood that nature was the designer, and he understood natural selection by analogy to human selection in domesticated animals, and this allowed him to provide a purely mechanical way of explaining the design of organisms, which were understood not so much as organisms but as machines. Um, Whereas on the continent, beginning with Kant, um, a major difference was recognized between the organization of an organism and the organization of a machine. Um, Both have parts, and both seem to um, function for some end. The idea of purpose in that sense, even in Darwinian biology, is kind of hard to do without, and we can argue about that, but it's kind of outside the main point I'm trying to make here, which is that in a machine you have parts, they're all external to one another. You can take them apart, let them sit independently of one another, and put them back together with no harm done to the workings of the machine. As long as they're in the right order, the machine will work indefinitely. An organism, while it also has parts, cells have organelles, bodies have organs, each of these parts is continually producing each of the other parts, as well as the boundary which encases them, the cell membrane or the skin of our bodies. And if you interrupt this ongoing process of self-production, the organism dies. You can't put it back together. So living organisms, self-organize and self-produce. Machines, on the other hand, are put together from the outside, piece by piece, by an intelligent agent of some kind. Kant recognized this. Darwin and the whole Anglo-American tradition, all the way leading up to Dennett and Dawkins, more specifically today, don't recognize this at all. In fact, Dawkins doesn't even recognize organisms as playing a role in evolution. For him, it's all the replication of molecules, which, to me, it's almost irrational to suppose that that's all that's involved in evolution. All you have to do, from my perspective, is look at any form of life to recognize that there is some intelligence there, and that the organism as a whole plays a role in whether or not it is fit in the particular environment that it lives in, such that you can't just understand evolution in terms of this inert molecule, which even Dawkins refers to it as a selfish molecule that wants to reproduce itself. And so the purpose, the telos, is there even in the most mechanical or reductionistic explanation. You can't get rid of it if you're going to understand life as distinct from a purely physical or chemical reaction of some kind. Physics doesn't recognize any difference between a living and a dead body. That's why we have biology, because there's this distinct character that we recognize, or this distinct quality that we recognize in living organisms. And I think that distinction is that living organisms are obviously purposeful. They act with intention. And I can't really prove this to you, because for me it's kind of this intuitive understanding of, watching a bacterium swim up a sucrose gradient. It's doing it because it's hungry. Physicists and chemists, they don't talk about physical or chemical systems being hungry. They don't need food because they're not alive. They don't have intentions. They don't have purposes. That's why we can understand them in physics and chemistry. But when it comes to living creatures, you really can't do without intentionality. It's a necessary explanatory feature, or a necessary feature you need to offer any explanation for what's going on when you watch a bacterium swim up a sucrose gradient. When it comes to determinism, the reason I'm trying to root some kind of freedom in life itself, and ultimately in the material cosmos, but let's leave that out for now. The reason I want to root freedom in life from the very beginning is that otherwise we run into these absurdities. If everything is just a determined mechanism, then everything we used to think of as being human is impossible. It's a charade. It's not real. We really can't have a legal system without some sense of freedom. And I am running out of time, so maybe I'll make another vid.